Sir, you need to leave this plane. Now! Colin Barrett looked up from his phone, confused. He was sitting in seat 1A, the best seat in first class. His navy blue suit was perfectly pressed. His leather briefcase sat at his feet. He had flown on this airline hundreds of times. Actually, he had flown on this exact plane before. But Naomi didn't know that. She didn't know a lot of things. "Excuse me," Colin said calmly, though his heart was starting to beat faster. "Is there a problem?" "Yes, there's a problem," Naomi snapped, her arms crossed tight against her chest. Her blonde ponytail swung as she shook her head. "Someone reported that you're making passengers uncomfortable. We have a zero-tolerance policy for suspicious behavior." Colin blinked. Suspicious behavior? He had been sitting quietly, checking his emails. He hadn't even ordered a drink yet. "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake," Colin said, keeping his voice steady. "I haven't done anything. I just boarded 10 minutes ago." Around them, other passengers were watching. Some looked curious. Others looked uncomfortable. An older white woman in seat 2C was whispering to her husband, both of them staring at Colin. Naomi's face hardened. "Sir, we received a complaint. That's all I need to know. Please gather your belongings and exit the aircraft." "A complaint about what exactly?" Colin asked. He could feel heat rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry would only make things worse. He knew how this worked. "I'm not required to share that information," Naomi said coldly. "But if you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have to call security." Colin's jaw tightened. He looked around the cabin. The other passengers in first class were all watching now. Some looked away when he made eye contact. Others just stared, like he was some kind of criminal. "I paid for this seat," Colin said quietly. "I have every right to be here." "Not if you're disrupting other passengers." Naomi shot back. She pulled out her radio. "I'm calling security now. You have 30 seconds to comply." A younger black woman, sitting across the aisle, spoke up. "He hasn't done anything. I've been sitting right here the whole time. He's just been on his phone." Naomi turned to her with a fake smile. "Ma'am, please stay out of this. We have procedures for safety and security." "Safety?" the woman said, her voice rising. "He's literally just sitting there." But Naomi ignored her. She pressed a button on her radio. "Security to Gate 7. We have a passenger refusing to deplane." Colin felt something break inside him. Not anger, not yet. It was something deeper. Sadness, maybe, or just exhaustion. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. It probably wouldn't be the last. But this time was different. This time, Naomi Spencer had no idea who she was talking to. 2 security officers appeared at the front of the plane. They were big men, both wearing dark uniforms with badges that caught the light. "This gentleman needs to exit the aircraft," Naomi told him, pointing at Colin like he was a piece of trash to be removed. The first security officer, a Hispanic man with kind eyes, looked confused. "What's the situation?" "We received a passenger complaint," Naomi explained. "He's refusing to leave." "I'm not refusing," Colin said calmly, looking at the officers. "I'm asking what I did wrong. I paid for this seat. I boarded legally. I haven't caused any problems." The second officer, a white man with a thick mustache, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, if the flight attendant is asking you to leave, we need you to comply." "Why?" Colin asked. "On what grounds?" "Sir, please don't make this difficult," Mustache said. The woman across the aisle stood up. "This is wrong. You all are discriminating against this man." Other passengers started murmuring. Some agreed. Others looked annoyed that the flight was being delayed. Naomi's face turned red. "I am not discriminating. I'm following protocol." "What protocol?" someone else called out. "He hasn't done anything." But Naomi wasn't listening anymore. She turned to the security officers. "Remove him. Now." The Hispanic officer sighed and reached for Colin's arm. Colin stood up slowly, his hands visible. He knew better than to make sudden movements. "I'll leave," he said quietly. "But I want everyone here to know I did nothing wrong." As the officers escorted him down the aisle, Every eye was on him. Some passengers looked sympathetic. Others looked scared, like they had something to be afraid of. The old woman in 2C actually pulled her purse closer, like Colin might snatch it as he walked by. When they reached the door of the plane, Colin turned back one last time. Naomi was standing at the front of first class, her arms still crossed, her face smug and satisfied. She had no idea what was coming. She had no idea that in exactly 4 hours, she would be sitting in her manager's office, watching security footage, her face turning white as a ghost. She had no idea that the man she just kicked off the plane was Colin Barrett, the 38-year-old CEO and majority owner of Liberty Airways, the same airline she worked for, the same airline whose plane she flew on every single day. As Colin stepped off the plane and into the jetway, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Sarah," he said to his assistant, "we have a problem. If you believe everyone deserves to be treated with respect, no matter what they look like, smash that like button right now. Only people who support discrimination and hate won't like this video. Don't be one of them. And hit subscribe if you want to see what happens when Naomi finds out the truth. Because trust me, it gets wild." For hours before Colin Barrett was escorted off Flight 447, he was sitting in a boardroom on the 52nd floor of the Liberty Airways headquarters in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. The morning sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making the city below look like a toy model. Colin loved this view. It reminded him of how far he'd come. "Colin, the quarterly numbers are outstanding," said Jennifer Park, his chief financial officer. She pushed a report across the long glass table. "We're up 18% from last year. Customer satisfaction scores are the highest they've been in 5 years. Colin smiled, but there was something tired in his eyes. "That's great, Jen. Really great. But what about the complaints?" The room got quiet. Richard Thompson, the head of operations, cleared his throat. "Complaints are, well, they're down overall. But what?" Colin asked. "But we're seeing a pattern," Richard admitted, looking uncomfortable. "Certain types of complaints are actually increasing." "What types?" Colin leaned forward. Jennifer pulled up a spreadsheet on the big screen. Discrimination complaints. Passengers, mostly black passengers, reporting unfair treatment by flight attendants and gate agents. "We've had 12 formal complaints this month alone." Colin's jaw tightened. This wasn't new information. He'd been seeing these reports for months. But every time he brought up in meetings, his management team found ways to explain it away. Isolated incidents. Misunderstandings. Protocol being followed correctly. 12 complaints in 1 month, Colin repeated. "And what are we doing about it?" "We're investigating each one individually," Richard said quickly. "Following proper procedures." "Richard, I don't want to hear about procedures," Colin interrupted, his voice sharp. "I want to know why this keeps happening. Why are black passengers being targeted?" "Targeted is a strong word," Richard said carefully. Colin stared at him. "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty clear. Black passengers are being removed from planes, questioned at gates, and treated like criminals at a much higher rate than white passengers. The data doesn't lie." Jennifer nodded slowly. "He's right, Richard. The numbers show a clear pattern." "So, what do you want us to do?" Richard asked, sounding defensive now. "We can't just ignore safety complaints from other passengers." "Safety complaints?" Colin stood up, his voice rising. "You mean complaints from passengers who feel uncomfortable sitting next to black people? Those safety complaints." The room fell silent. Colin took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. "Look, I'm not saying we ignore legitimate safety concerns, but we need better training. Our staff needs to understand the difference between actual suspicious behavior and racial profiling. Because right now, we're failing our customers. And that's not acceptable. I'll set up a training program." Jennifer said immediately. "Make it mandatory," Colin added. "Every flight attendant, every gate agent, every security officer, everyone who interacts with passengers. I want this handled." Richard nodded, but he didn't look happy about it. After the meeting ended, Colin stayed in the boardroom alone. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere down there, on one of Liberty Airways' planes, maybe this was happening right now. Maybe someone who looked like him was being made to feel small, scared, or unwelcome. His phone buzzed. It was his assistant, Sarah. "Don't forget, you have that flight to Chicago at 2 p.m., the text read. "Meeting with the investors at 6. Colin sighed. He hated flying commercial these days, even on his own airline. It would be easier to take the company jet. But he made himself fly regular flights at least once a month. He needed to see what real passengers experienced. He needed to know if his airline was living up to its values. Besides, he thought with a small smile, it was fun to see the look on flight attendants' faces when they eventually realized who he was. Usually someone recognized him, or he'd introduce himself. The crew would get excited, offering him free drinks and upgrades he didn't need. Today would be different, though. Colin decided he wouldn't tell anyone who he was. He'd just be a regular passenger. He wanted to see how he'd be treated when nobody knew he owned the company. It was a test, and he hoped his airline would pass. At 1:30 p.m., Colin arrived at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. He was wearing his Navy suit and carrying his leather briefcase. He looked exactly like what he was, a successful businessman traveling for work. The check-in process was smooth. The gate agent, a young Asian woman named Kim, according to her name tag, was friendly and efficient. "You're in 1A today, Mr. Barrett," she said with a smile. "First class. Should be a great flight." "Thank you," Colin said warmly. Security was easy, too. No problems, no questions. Just a normal routine of removing his shoes and laptop. As he walked through the terminal toward Gate 7, Colin felt good. Maybe things were getting better. Maybe those training programs they'd started last quarter were actually working. He grabbed a coffee at a Starbucks and checked his emails while he waited aboard. The Chicago meeting was important. 3 major investors were considering putting another $50 million into Liberty Airways. If this meeting went well, they could expand to 10 new cities by next year. "First-class passengers, please begin boarding," the gate agent announced. Colin stood up, grabbed his briefcase, and walked to the gate. He handed over his boarding pass and walked down the jetway. The plane was beautiful, one of their newer models, only 6 months old. Colin had personally approved the interior design. Cream-colored leather seats, warm lighting, extra legroom even in economy. As he stepped onto the plane, a flight attendant greeted him at the door. She was a white woman, maybe in her early 30s, with blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her name tag read Naomi Spencer. "Welcome aboard," Naomi said with a professional smile. "Thank you," Colin replied. He found his seat 1A right at the front of first class. Perfect. He could get some work done during the 2-hour flight to Chicago. Colin settled in, pulling out his laptop. Around him, other first-class passengers were boarding. A white businessman in his 50s. A young white couple, probably on vacation. An older white woman with her husband. And then, across the aisle in seat 1C, a young black woman sat down. She was probably in her late 20s, wearing jeans and a Howard University sweatshirt. She caught Colin's eye and smiled. "First time in first class," she said excitedly. "I used my miles to upgrade. This is amazing." Colin grinned. "It's pretty nice. Enjoy it." "Oh, I will," she laughed. More passengers filed in. The plane was filling up quickly. Colin went back to his laptop, reviewing notes for the Chicago meeting. Then he heard voices getting louder near the front of the plane. "I just think it's suspicious," an older woman's voice said. It was a woman sitting in 2C. "He got on the plane so quickly, and he keeps looking around. I don't feel safe." Colin's fingers froze on his keyboard. He looked around. Of course he looked around. Everyone looks around when they board a plane. You have to find your seat. "I understand your concern," Naomi's voice replied, low but not quite low enough. "I'll keep an eye on the situation." Colin's stomach dropped. He had a horrible feeling he knew exactly who that woman was talking about. He glanced up. The older woman in 2C was staring right at him. When their eyes met, she quickly looked away and leaned closer to her husband, whispering. No, Colin thought. Not today. Not on MY Airline. But he stayed quiet. He didn't want to cause a scene. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe they were talking about someone else. He went back to his work, but he couldn't concentrate anymore. His heart was beating faster. His hands felt cold. 10 minutes passed. The boarding process continued. Economy passengers filed past first class, heading to the back of the plane. Then Colin saw Naomi walking up the aisle toward him. Her face was set in a hard expression. Professional, but cold. She stopped right next to his seat. "Sir," she said loudly, "I need to speak with you." Everyone in first class turned to look, and that's when Colin's worst fear was confirmed. That's when he knew that his own airline, the company he had built from nothing, was about to fail his test in the most painful way possible. "Is there a problem?" Colin asked quietly, even though he already knew the answer. "Yes," Naomi said, her voice like ice. "There is. If you're angry right now, if this makes your blood boil, drop a comment telling me what you would have done if you were Colin in that moment. And subscribe if you believe racism has no place on airplanes or anywhere else." The people who won't subscribe are the same ones who think Naomi was just doing her job. Don't be like them. After Colin was escorted off the plane, the two security officers walked him back through the jetway and into the terminal. Other passengers waiting at nearby gates stared as he passed. Some pulled out their phones, recording. Others whispered to each other. Colin kept his head up. He refused to look ashamed, because he had nothing to be ashamed of. The Hispanic security officer, whose name tag read Officer Martinez, looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Sir, I'm really sorry about this. We have to follow the flight crew's instructions, but this doesn't feel right." "It's not right," Colin said quietly, "but I understand you're just doing your job." They brought him to a small security office near the gate. It was a cramped room with gray walls, a metal desk, and 2 plastic chairs. The kind of room where they questioned people who were accused of being threats. Colin sat down. Officer Martinez sat across from him while the other officer, whose name tag read Officer Davis, stood by the door. "We need to ask you some questions," Martinez said, pulling out a form. "Standard procedure." "Standard procedure for what?" Colin asked. "What exactly am I being accused of?" Martinez looked down at his paperwork. "The flight attendant reported that another passenger felt threatened by your behavior. They said you were looking around suspiciously and that you boarded the plane very quickly." Colin almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about this. "I looked around. I boarded quickly. Those are crimes now." "Sir, I know this seems." "No, you don't know," Colin interrupted, his calm finally cracking a little. "You don't know what this feels like. To pay for a first-class seat on a plane, to do absolutely nothing wrong, and to get dragged off like you're some kind of criminal, while everyone watches, while people record you on their phones like you're a viral video waiting to happen." Martinez looked down. "You're right. I'm sorry." They asked him questions for 20 minutes. Where was he traveling? Why? Did he have any weapons? Any dangerous materials? Had he made any threats? To all of it, Colin answered calmly and completely, because he had nothing to hide. Finally, Martinez closed his folder. "Mr. Barrett, we're not going to detain you further. You're free to go. But you've been banned from Flight 447. You'll need to book another flight to Chicago." "Banned," Colin repeated. "From my own." He stopped himself. Not yet. He wasn't ready to reveal who he was yet. "I'm sorry," Martinez said again. He actually did look sorry. Colin stood up and grabbed his briefcase. "Thank you for being professional about this. Both of you." As he walked out of the security office, he pulled out his phone and called Sarah again. "Sarah, I need you to do something for me," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Pull the security footage from Gate 7. All of it, from the moment I boarded until the moment I was removed. And I need the audio from inside the plane. We have those recordings, right?" "Yes, we record all interactions for quality assurance," Sarah said, her voice concerned. "Colin, what happened?" "I'll tell you when I get to the office. I'm coming back instead of going to Chicago. Reschedule the investor meeting for tomorrow. And Sarah, I need you to pull Naomi Spencer's employment file. Every detail. Training records, previous incidents, everything. Who's Naomi Spencer? A flight attendant who just made the biggest mistake of her career. Meanwhile, back on Flight 447, Naomi Spencer was feeling triumphant. The plane had finally taken off, 30 minutes late, because of the incident. Some passengers had complained about the delay, but Naomi didn't care. She had kept everyone safe. That's what mattered. The young black woman in seat 1C hadn't stopped glaring at her since takeoff. A few other passengers had given her dirty looks too, but Naomi told herself they just didn't understand. They hadn't seen what she'd seen. They didn't know what it was like to be responsible for a whole plane full of people. Can I get you anything? Naomi asked the older white woman in 2C, the one who had made the original complaint. The woman smiled warmly. Some white wine, please. And thank you, dear. I feel so much safer now. Just doing my job, ma'am, Naomi said with a satisfied smile. She went to the galley to prepare drinks. Another flight attendant, Marcus, Michael Reed, was already there preparing snacks. That was intense, Michael said quietly. He was a black man in his 40s who'd been flying for Liberty Airways for 15 years. Naomi, are you sure that was necessary? What do you mean? Naomi asked, annoyed. A passenger made a complaint. I followed protocol. But did you investigate complaint? Michael pressed. Did you observe the passenger yourself? Did you see him actually do anything wrong? I don't need to see it myself, Naomi snapped. We have a policy. If a passenger feels unsafe, we take it seriously. And what about his safety? Michael asked, his voice rising slightly. What about his dignity? That man was humiliated in front of everyone. Oh, please, Naomi rolled her eyes. Don't make this about race. It is about race. Michael said, louder now, you and I both know that man did nothing wrong. He was sitting quietly, minding his own business. But because some scared white woman decided he looked suspicious, you threw him off the plane without a second thought. I was protecting my passengers, Naomi said coldly. You were protecting some of your passengers, Michael corrected. That man was your passenger too, and you failed him. Naomi grabbed the wine and walked away. She didn't need this. She didn't need Michael acting like she was some kind of racist. She wasn't racist. She had black friends. She voted for Obama. She had a responsibility to keep people safe. But as the flight continued, Naomi started to feel uneasy. More passengers were giving her cold looks. The woman in 1C had asked another flight attendant for drinks instead of asking Naomi. And when Naomi walked through the cabin, she heard whispers. That was so wrong. Did you see his face? He looked devastated. I can't believe they did that to him. Naomi tried to shake it off. People just didn't understand. By tomorrow, everyone would forget about it. She had no idea that by tomorrow, the entire country would be talking about it. She had no idea that the young woman in the Howard sweatshirt had recorded part of the incident on her phone and was already uploading it to Twitter with the hashtag #FlyingWhileblack. She had no idea that Colin Barrett was, at that very moment, sitting in his Atlanta office, watching security footage of her pointing at him, ordering him off the plane, calling security on him like he was a criminal. And she definitely had no idea that in 3 hours, she would receive a call from her supervisor asking her to report to main office immediately upon landing. Back in Atlanta, Colin sat in his office with Sarah and Jennifer Park, his CFO. The security footage played on the big screen. They watched as Colin boarded the plane, smiling, greeting Naomi politely. They watched him find a seat, sit down, pull out his laptop. They watched him exchange a friendly smile with the woman in 1C. There was nothing suspicious, nothing threatening, nothing wrong. Then they watched as the older woman in 2C leaned over to her husband, pointing at Colin. They watched her get up and approach Naomi. The audio was clear. I don't feel comfortable, the old woman said. That man boarded so quickly, and he keeps looking around. My husband and I travel a lot, and we know what to look for. I have a bad feeling. And Naomi's response made Colin's blood boil. I understand completely, ma'am. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll handle it right away. No investigation. No observation. No questions about what specific behavior was concerning. Just immediate acceptance that a black man in first class must be a threat. Jennifer paused the video. Colin, this is bad. It's worse than bad, Sarah added. She pulled up her phone. It's already going viral. The woman in 1C posted a video on Twitter. It has 50,000 retweets already. She showed Colin her phone. The video showed him sitting calmly while Naomi pointed at the door, her voice sharp and loud. Sir, you need to leave this plane. Now. The comments were brutal. This is disgusting. At Liberty Airways should be ashamed. Flying while black is apparently a crime now. Hashtag boycott Liberty. That man was so calm and dignified while being humiliated. This is heartbreaking. Colin felt sick. This was his airline, his company, the business he'd built from nothing that he'd poured his heart and soul into for 10 years. And it had just failed him in the most public, painful way possible. What do you want to do? Jennifer asked quietly. Colin stared at the frozen image on the screen. Naomi Spencer, pointing at him like he was trash. Get her supervisor on the phone, Colin said, and draft a statement for our social media. We're going to address this head on. What kind of statement? Sarah asked. The truth, Colin said, that what happened today was unacceptable, that we failed one of our passengers, that we're investigating, and there will be consequences. Colin, Jennifer said carefully, do you want to reveal who you are? That you're the CEO? Colin thought about it. Part of him wanted to. Part of him wanted to see the look on Naomi Spencer's face when she realized what she'd done. But another part of him hesitated, because this wasn't really about him. This happened to black passengers every day. Passengers who weren't CEOs, who didn't own airlines, who had no power to fight back. If he revealed who he was, would people care about the discrimination? Or would they just focus on the drama of CEO kicked off his own plane? Not yet, Colin decided. First, I want to see how Liberty Airways handles this. I want to see if my own company will do the right thing, even when they don't know I'm watching. It was another test. And tomorrow, in a small conference room at the airport, Naomi Spencer would find out if she had passed or failed. If you think Naomi Spencer should face consequences for what she did, hit that like button hard. And comment below, Team Colin or Team Naomi. If you don't comment, we'll assume you think what she did was okay. And subscribe if you want to see what happens when Naomi gets called into that office. Because trust me, the next chapter is intense. Only people who support discrimination won't subscribe. Naomi Spencer had been a flight attendant for 7 years. In all that time, she'd never been called into a supervisor meeting the moment she landed. But here she was at 5:47 p.m., still in her uniform, sitting in a gray conference room at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Across from her sat her direct supervisor, Patricia Hoffman, and the regional director of flight operations, David Sullivan. Neither of them looked happy. Naomi, do you know why you're here? Patricia asked. She was a stern woman in her 50s with short gray hair and glasses that made her look like a librarian. I assume it's about the incident on Flight 447, Naomi said. She tried to sound confident, but her hands were shaking slightly in her lap. But I followed protocol exactly. A passenger made a safety complaint, and I responded appropriately. David Sullivan, a tall white man with a receding hairline, leaned forward. Walk us through exactly what happened. From the beginning. Naomi took a deep breath. A first-class passenger, Mrs. Eleanor Roberts in seat 2C, approached me during boarding. She expressed concern about another passenger in seat 1A. She said he boarded very quickly, was looking around suspiciously, and that she and her husband didn't feel safe. And what did you do? Patricia asked. I thanked her for bringing it to my attention. Then I observed the passenger in 1A myself. You observed him, David repeated. What exactly did you observe? Naomi hesitated. Well, he was sitting there with his laptop. He looked intense, focused, and he had a very expensive briefcase. It seemed off. Patricia removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Naomi, let me get this straight. A man sitting quietly with his laptop and an expensive briefcase Seemed off to you? Mrs. Roberts was genuinely scared. Naomi insisted. I could see it in her eyes. And we're trained to take passenger concerns seriously, especially after September 11th. We're supposed to trust our gut instincts about safety. Your gut instincts, David said slowly. Naomi, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to be honest. Did the passenger in seat 1A do anything? Anything that was actually suspicious? Did he make threats? Did he act aggressively? Did he try to access restricted areas? No, but did he raise his voice? Refuse to follow instructions? Display any weapons or concerning items? No, but you don't understand. What I understand, David interrupted, his voice hard now, is that you removed a paying first-class passenger from an aircraft based on nothing. Zero evidence of wrongdoing. I had a passenger complaint. Naomi's voice rose. I was just doing my job. Patricia slid a piece of paper across the table. This is Mrs. Eleanor Roberts' original complaint, written down word for word. Do you want to know what she said? Naomi picked up the paper. Her eyes scanned the words. That black man got on plane too fast, and he keeps looking around. I don't trust him. My husband and I have traveled all over the world, and we know what terrorists look like. I want him off this plane. Naomi's face went pale. Seeing the word black written out like that, right at the beginning, it looked bad. Really bad. She didn't say it exactly like that. Naomi stammered. Actually, she did. Patricia said, we have audio recordings, Naomi. We record all interactions in the cabin for quality assurance. Would you like to hear it? Naomi's mouth went dry. No, I remember now. But she wasn't being racist. She was genuinely scared. Some people just get nervous flying, and Naomi, David's voice cut through her rambling. Do you know who you removed from that flight? Naomi blinked. Just a passenger. A businessman, I think. Why? Who was he? David and Patricia exchanged a look. Patricia opened a folder and pulled out several printed screenshots. She spread them across the table. They were tweets. Hundreds of them. All showing pictures and videos of a well-dressed black man being escorted off a plane by security. Hashtag flying while black. At Liberty Airways, this is disgusting. Boycott Liberty Airways until they fire this racist flight attendant. That poor man did nothing wrong. Naomi felt her stomach drop. Oh my God. This went viral. 600,000 retweets. Patricia said. National news is picking it up. CNN, NBC, Fox News, everyone. This is the biggest PR nightmare Liberty Airways has faced in a decade. Naomi's hands were trembling now. But I didn't do anything wrong. I was following safety protocols. You racially profiled a passenger, David said bluntly. That's what you did. I did not. Naomi stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I am not a racist. I don't see color. I treat everyone the same. If you don't see color, Patricia said quietly, then why is it that in your 7 years of flying, you filed 17 safety complaints about passengers? And according to our records, 14 of those passengers were black or brown. Only 3 were white. Naomi froze. That's just a coincidence. Is it? David pulled out another file. 2 years ago, you had a passenger removed from a flight to Miami, a black teenager traveling alone. You said he was acting suspicious and not following instructions. Turns out he was listening to music with headphones and didn't hear you the first time you asked him about his seatbelt. Last year, Patricia continued, you reported a Middle Eastern man for having suspicious wires in his bag. They were phone chargers. 6 months ago, you called security on a black woman in first class because another passenger complained she was dressed inappropriately. She was wearing a business suit. With each example, Naomi felt smaller and smaller. Those were all legitimate concerns. No, Naomi, they weren't. David closed the folder. You have a pattern of targeting passengers of color based on complaints from white passengers who are afraid of people who don't look like them. And instead of using your judgment, instead of actually observing whether these passengers were doing anything wrong, you just went along with it. Tears started forming in Naomi's eyes. I was trying to keep people safe. You were keeping white people comfortable, Patricia corrected, at the expense of passengers of color. And that's not the same thing. Naomi sat back down heavily. The room was spinning. This couldn't be happening. She wasn't racist. She wasn't. What happens now? She asked quietly. David and Patricia looked at each other again. As of right now, you're suspended without pay, pending a full investigation, David said. We're reviewing all of your past incidents. We're interviewing other crew members you've worked with, and we're consulting with our legal team about potential termination. Termination? Naomi's voice cracked. You're going to fire me? That depends on what the investigation reveals, Patricia said. But, Naomi, I'm going to be honest with you. This looks really, really bad. You humiliated a passenger on camera. The video has been seen by millions of people. Liberty Airways stock dropped 3% today because of this incident. Our reputation is being destroyed on social media. And there's something else, David added, something we haven't told you yet. Naomi looked up, her face streaked with tears. What could possibly be worse than this? David pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. It was Colin Barrett, the man from seat 1A, but in this picture, he was standing in front of Liberty Airways' plane, shaking hands with a pilot, smiling at the camera. This photo was taken 3 years ago, David explained, at the opening ceremony for our new Atlanta headquarters. Naomi stared at the photo, confused. I don't understand. Why do you have a picture of him? Patricia leaned forward. Naomi, the man you removed from Flight 447, his name is Colin Barrett. He's the founder, CEO, and majority owner of Liberty Airways. The room went completely silent. Naomi's brain couldn't process what she just heard. It was like the words were in a foreign language. That's not possible, she whispered. The owner would fly private. He wouldn't be in regular first class. He would have told me who he was. He flies commercial at least once a month, Patricia said. He believes in experiencing what regular passengers experience. And he specifically chose not to identify himself because he wanted to see how our crew would treat an ordinary passenger. Naomi felt like she was going to throw up. She had kicked her boss off a plane. She had kicked the owner of the airline off a plane. In front of everyone. On camera. Oh, God, she breathed. Oh, my God. Mr. Barrett is currently deciding how he wants to handle the situation, David said. We're expecting to hear from him within the next 24 hours. In the meantime, you need to go home, Naomi. Don't talk to the press. Don't post anything on social media. Don't contact Mr. Barrett or anyone else involved in this incident. Naomi nodded numbly. She felt like she was floating outside of her body, watching this happen to someone else. This couldn't be real. This had to be a nightmare. But as she walked out of that conference room, past other airline employees who were whispering and staring at her, she knew it was very, very real. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Text messages from friends who'd seen the viral video. Missed calls from reporters. A notification that she'd been tagged in thousands of angry tweets. Her career was over. Her reputation was destroyed. And it was all her own fault. That evening, Colin Barrett sat in his home office in his Buckhead neighborhood of Atlanta, staring at his computer screen. The video of his removal had been shared millions of times now. The hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack was trending #1 on Twitter. His phone rang. It was his mother, calling from Charlotte, North Carolina. Colin? Baby, I just saw the news. Are you okay? Colin smiled sadly. His mother always knew. Yeah, Mom. I'm okay. No, you're not, she said firmly. I saw that video. I saw how they treated you. My baby boy, treated like a criminal on his own airplane. Mom. Don't you mom me, she interrupted. I know you're trying to be strong. I know you're thinking about the company, about the big picture. But, Colin, that was wrong. What they did to you was wrong. Colin felt his throat tighten. He'd been holding it together all day, staying professional, staying focused. But hearing his mother's voice, hearing her anger and pain on his behalf. "I know it was wrong, Mom," he said quietly, "and I'm going to make sure it never happens again. Not to me, not to anyone." "What are you going to do?" Colin looked at the statement Sarah had drafted, ready to be posted to all of Liberty Airways' social media accounts. It was professional, apologetic, and vague. He deleted it. Then he opened a blank document and started typing a new one. This time, he was going to tell the whole truth. If you're furious at what Naomi did, if you think she got exactly what she deserved, smash that like button right now. Comment below. Should Naomi be fired, or does she deserve a second chance? And subscribe if you believe actions have consequences, especially when those actions hurt innocent people. The trolls and haters won't subscribe. The next morning, at exactly 8 a.m., Colin Barrett posted a video to Liberty Airways' official social media accounts. He was wearing a simple gray sweater, sitting in his home office with bookshelves visible behind him. No fancy suit, no corporate backdrop, just him, speaking directly to the camera. "Good morning. My name is Colin Barrett, and I'm the CEO and founder of Liberty Airways. By now, many of you have seen a video of me being removed from one of our flights yesterday. I want to talk to you about what happened, why it happened, and what we're going to do about it." Within minutes, the video had thousands of views. Within an hour, it had millions. Colin's voice was calm but firm as he continued. "Yesterday, I boarded Flight 447 from Atlanta to Chicago. I was in seat 1A, first class. I had done nothing wrong. I wasn't being loud or disruptive. I wasn't behaving suspiciously. I was simply sitting in my seat, checking my emails, preparing for a business meeting. But another passenger, a white woman, decided that I looked threatening. She told our flight attendant that I had boarded too quickly and was looking around suspiciously. Based on nothing but this complaint, I was removed from the aircraft by security." He paused, letting that sink in. "Now, I could tell you that this was unacceptable because I'm the CEO. I could focus on how embarrassing it is that this happened on my own airline, but that would be missing the point entirely. Because the truth is, what happened to me happens to black passengers every single day, on airlines across this country, in airports, on planes, at gates. We are treated as threats simply for existing in spaces that some people think we don't belong." Colin's jaw tightened slightly, the only sign of his emotion. "I founded Liberty Airways 10 years ago with a vision. I want to create an airline that treated every passenger with dignity and respect, where everyone, regardless of their race, religion, or background, would feel welcome. Yesterday, we failed that vision completely. We failed our passengers. We failed our values. And we failed me." He leaned forward slightly. "I want to be clear about something. The flight attendant who removed me, Naomi Spencer, was following what she believed was protocol. She thought she was keeping passengers safe. But here's the problem. She never stopped to question whether the complaint was legitimate. She never observed my behavior herself. She just took a scared white passenger's word that a black man in first class must be dangerous." Colin pulled out a piece of paper. "I've reviewed Naomi's employment record. In 7 years of flying, she's filed 17 safety complaints about passengers. 14 of them were about black or brown passengers. 3 were about white passengers. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. And it's a pattern we should have caught and addressed years ago." He set the paper down. "But this isn't just about Naomi Spencer. This is about a systemic problem in the airline industry and in America. We live in a country where black people are seen as suspicious for simply existing, for sitting quietly, for boarding a plane, for wearing a hoodie, for driving a nice car, for living in a nice neighborhood. We are constantly asked to prove we belong, to justify our presence, to make white people comfortable." His voice grew stronger. "I'm tired of it, and I know millions of other black Americans are tired of it too. So here's what Liberty Airways is going to do about it." Colin counted off on his fingers. "First, we are immediately implementing mandatory anti-bias training for every single employee. Flight attendants, gate agents, pilots, security personnel, everyone. This training will be comprehensive, ongoing, and required. If you work for Liberty Airways, You will learn to recognize your own biases and how they affect your decisions. Second, we are changing our protocols. From now on, if a passenger makes a complaint about another passenger, our crew must observe and document actual problematic behavior before taking action. He looks suspicious is not a reason to remove someone from a plane. She's dressed inappropriately is not a reason. I don't like how he's looking around is not a reason. There must be actual evidence of a safety threat. Third, we are creating an independent review board made up of civil rights experts, community leaders, and passengers from diverse backgrounds. This board will review all passenger removal incidents to ensure they were justified and not based on discrimination. Fourth, any employee found to have engaged in racial profiling will face immediate consequences, up to and including termination. We will not tolerate discrimination in any form. Colin paused, his expression softening slightly. Now, regarding Naomi Spencer specifically, many of you want to know if she'll be fired. Here's what I've decided. Naomi is suspended, without pay while we complete a full investigation. But I'm also offering her a choice. She can go through intensive anti-bias training, work with a counselor to understand how her actions cause harm, and commit to doing better. If she completes this process sincerely and demonstrates real growth and understanding, she may be eligible to return to work. Not as a flight attendant, but in a ground position where she can learn and rebuild trust. However, his voice became firm again. If she refuses this opportunity, or if the investigation reveals additional concerning behavior, her employment will be terminated, because I believe in second chances, but I also believe in accountability. Colin looked directly into the camera. To everyone who has experienced discrimination while flying, whether on Liberty Airways or any other airline, I see you. I believe you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that in 2025, we're still having to fight these battles. I'm sorry that you can't simply exist without being viewed as a threat. To the woman who recorded the video of my removal and posted it online, thank you. You didn't have to do that. You could have looked away like so many others did. But you chose to speak up. And because of that, millions of people are now having conversations about racial profiling that desperately need to happen. And to Mrs. Eleanor Roberts, the passenger who complained about me, I hope you're watching this. I hope you understand that your fear, whether you realize it or not, was rooted in racism. Your assumptions about me were wrong. I wasn't a threat. I was just a man trying to get to a meeting. But your fear had real consequences. It got me thrown off a plane. It humiliated me, and it's part of a larger pattern that harms black people every single day. Colin took a deep breath. Liberty Airways will do better. We have to do better, because an airline that doesn't serve all passengers equally isn't an airline that deserves to exist. And I won't let the company I built be remembered as a place where discrimination was tolerated. He smiled slightly, the first smile since the video started. If you've ever experienced discrimination while flying, I want to hear from you. We're setting up a dedicated email protected, where you can share your story. Every single email will be read. Every story matters. And we'll use what we learned to keep improving. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for holding us accountable. That's how we all get better together. The video ended. Within hours, the video had 20 million views. Comments flooded in, thousands per minute. This is what real leadership looks like. I've never flown Liberty Airways, but I will now. This man gets it. Crying watching this. Finally someone in power who understands. Still boycotting until we see real change, but this is a good first step. News outlets picked up the story. CNN ran a segment with the headline, CEO removed from his own airline speaks out. MSNBC interviewed civil rights leaders who praised Colin's response. Even Fox News, typically skeptical of discrimination claims, acknowledged that what happened was wrong. In Charlotte, Colin's mother watched the video 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She called him immediately. "That's my boy," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you, Colin. Your father would be so proud." Colin's father had died when Colin was 15, a heart attack that came out of nowhere. But before he died, he'd told Colin something that stuck with him forever. "Son, If you ever get power in this world, real power, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget what it feels like to be underestimated, overlooked, and pushed aside. Use that power to make things better for people who look like us. I'm trying, Dad. Colin whispered after hanging up with his mother. I'm really trying. That afternoon, Naomi Spencer watched Colin's video in her apartment. She'd been hiding there since yesterday, ignoring calls from reporters, watching her entire life fall apart online. She watched as Colin explained what happened. She watched as he laid out her pattern of behavior, the pattern she'd never even noticed herself. She watched as he offered her a second chance she wasn't sure she deserved. When the video ended, Naomi sat in silence for a long time. Then she did something she should have done yesterday. She really, truly thought about what she'd done. She thought about Colin's face when she pointed at the door, the hurt in his eyes, the way he'd stayed so calm even as she humiliated him. She thought about all the other passengers over the years. The black teenager with headphones, the Middle Eastern man with phone chargers, the black woman in the business suit. Had they all looked at her the same way, with that same hurt? Naomi picked up her phone and opened Twitter. She'd been avoiding it, terrified of what people were saying about her. But now she forced herself to read. Naomi Spencer is a disgrace. This woman destroyed a man's dignity for no reason. I hope she never works in customer service again. But there were other comments too. I used to be like Naomi. I didn't think I was racist, but I made assumptions about people based on how they looked. We all need to do better. This is why we need to examine our biases. Naomi probably really believed she was just doing her job. That's how insidious racism is. Everyone makes mistakes. The question is whether she'll learn from this. Naomi thought about Colin's offer, anti-bias training, counseling, a chance to understand what she'd done wrong and why. Part of her wanted to refuse. Part of her wanted to be angry, to insist she'd done nothing wrong, to blame everyone else. But a bigger part of her, the part that was finally being honest, knew the truth. She had done something wrong. She had let fear and bias guide her decisions instead of evidence and fairness. She had hurt people, many people, over many years. And if she wanted any chance at redemption, she had to face that truth. Naomi picked up her phone and called Patricia Hoffman. "Patricia, it's Naomi," she said, her voice shaking. "I watched Mr. Barrett's video, and I want to take the training. All of it. I want to understand what I did wrong. I want to do better." There was a pause on the other end. "That's good to hear, Naomi," Patricia said carefully. "But I need you to understand, this isn't going to be easy. You're going to have to confront some very uncomfortable truths about yourself." "I know," Naomi whispered, "but I have to try, because what I did to Mr. Barrett, what I've been doing for years, it's not okay, and I can't keep pretending it is." 3 weeks later, Colin stood in a conference room at Liberty Airways headquarters, surrounded by the new independent review board he'd created. The board included Dr. Angela Freeman, a professor of African American Studies from Spelman College, Reverend James Mitchell, a civil rights leader from Birmingham, Maria Gonzalez, an immigration attorney, and 5 ordinary passengers who had volunteered to help make flying safer and fairer for everyone. "Thank you all for being here," Colin said. "I know you're all busy, and I appreciate you taking time to help us get this right." Dr. Freeman smiled. "Mr. Barrett, what you're doing here is important, not just for Liberty Airways, but for the entire industry. You're setting a standard." "I'm trying," Colin said, "but I'm going to need your help. All of you, because I can't fix this alone." They spent the next 3 hours reviewing policies, discussing training programs, and planning for the future. It was exhausting work, but it was necessary work. After the meeting, as everyone was leaving, Reverend Mitchell pulled Colin aside. "Son, I've been doing civil rights work for 40 years, he said, his weathered hand on Colin's shoulder. "And I've seen a lot of people talk about change. But you're actually doing something. That video you made, it wasn't just words. You're backing it up with action. That matters." Colin felt his throat tighten. "I just wish it didn't take me getting kicked off a plane to make it happen." Sometimes God works in mysterious ways. the Reverend said with a kind smile. Maybe this happened so that you could truly understand what your passengers go through. And now you can fix it. Not just for you, but for everyone. 6 months later, Liberty Airways held a press conference to announce their progress. Colin stood at a podium, looking out at reporters, cameras, and stakeholders. 6 months ago, I was removed from one of my own planes because of racial profiling. Today, I'm here to tell you what we've done since then to make sure it never happens again. He went through the numbers. 100% of employees had completed anti-bias training. Passenger complaints about discrimination were down 70%. The Independent Review Board had reviewed 143 passenger removal incidents and found that 12 of them showed evidence of bias. Those employees were facing consequences. We're not perfect, Colin admitted. We still have work to do, but we're committed to doing it every single day. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Barrett, what about Naomi Spencer? Is she still with the company? Colin nodded. Naomi completed her training and counseling. She worked with Dr. Freeman and Reverend Mitchell for 3 months, really digging deep into her own biases and understanding the harm she caused. She's currently working in our customer service office, not dealing directly with passengers yet, but learning and growing. If she continues on this path, there may be opportunities for her in the future. But she'll never be in a position where she can remove passengers from flights again. Another reporter spoke up. Some people have criticized you for not firing her immediately. They say you were too lenient. What do you say to that? Colin paused, chose his words carefully. I understand that anger. I felt it too, but I believe in restorative justice. I believe people can change if they're willing to do the hard work. Naomi was wrong, deeply wrong. But she's taking responsibility. She's learning. She's growing. And I think there's value in that. However, he added firmly, if at any point she shows that she hasn't truly changed or she engages in discriminatory behavior again, she will be terminated immediately. Second chances come with conditions. That evening, Colin sat in his office, exhausted but satisfied. His phone buzzed with a text from the young woman who had recorded the original video. The woman in the Howard sweatshirt. Mr. Barrett, I just want to say thank you for everything you've done, for speaking up, for making changes, for showing that one person can make a difference. You've inspired me to apply to law school. I want to fight for civil rights. Thank you for showing me what that looks like. Colin smiled and typed back. Thank you for using your voice when it mattered most. The world needs more people like you. Good luck with law school. He looked out his office window at the Atlanta skyline, lights twinkling in the evening darkness. 6 months ago, he'd been humiliated on his own airplane, treated like a criminal in front of dozens of people. But from that pain came purpose. From that discrimination came determination to make things better. Liberty Airways wasn't perfect. America wasn't perfect. But they were both a little bit better than they were 6 months ago. And tomorrow, Colin will wake up and keep working to make them even better. Because that's what leaders do. They don't just complain about problems. They fix them, one flight at a time. If this story moved you, if it made you think, made you angry, made you want to fight for change, then hit that like button right now. Comment below and tell us, what would you do if you witnessed discrimination like this? And subscribe because stories like this matter. Stories that show real problems and real solutions matter. Only the people who think discrimination is not a big deal won't subscribe. Don't be one of them. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's experienced discrimination. Share it with someone who doesn't think racism still exists. Share it with everyone. Because the more we talk about these issues, the more we can fix them. Remember, change starts with awareness. Awareness starts with stories. And stories start with people like you who care enough to listen, learn, and take action. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being part of the solution. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about transformation. It's about making sure tomorrow is better than today. And that's exactly what Colin Barrett did.